How can the 76ers turn this season around? They dropped to 2-12. I think that they can based on the play from Joel Embiid, but it is not so fun in Philadelphia right now, dropping to 12 losses.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? It's Kayla Santiago alongside Keith Pompey with you each and every day on Locked On 76ers. And today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. So there's a lot to discuss after also coming off a press conference from Nick Nurse, too. We're going to recap all of that action. So the 76ers fall to 2-12 after falling to Memphis in this game against a very shorthanded team, 117 to 111. Can this season be turned around? Well, the only positive thing right now that we saw was Joel Embiid actually being able to answer back from criticism. And then PG does go down once again on that same knee. So Keith, let's get right into it here because there is a lot to unpack. The Philadelphia 76ers, I had faith in this game after I saw the injury report that John Morant and Zach Edey were not going to be playing against the Philadelphia 76ers. And then they fall, and it doesn't look like that they're able to keep up with the physicality. And that's exactly what Nick Nurse said in the press conference. How do you not keep up when you're facing a team with no Ja and no Edey?
Yeah, and that's the problem. You know what I mean? That's the problem. I like your intro and everything that you said, and I don't want to be negative. I do not want to be negative. But, tonight, Joel Embiid was guarded for the most part by a 6'7" power forward, right? Mm-hmm. So he should dominate him. But the thing is, when you look at it, this was, when you and I, when we gave our predictions, we actually felt like they would struggle against this team and win. But then, like you said, when we talk about the injury report, it was one of those things like, this is a great opportunity for them to get a win. And then all of a sudden, that ugly head where they can't score baskets and miss shots and do all types of other things reared itself again. Not only did Zach Edey not play, right? Not only did Ja Morant not play, so did Marcus Smart and like 3 other players who didn't play. So they were without 6 guys. Yeah. And it seems like, they had they were missing 3 starters, right? So to me, it looks like the Joel Embiid thing was a positive, 35 points, 11 rebounds, season highs. He was way more aggressive. But at the same time, this was a gimme game for the 76ers, and they threw it away again.
And I love how you kind of start things off with, I don't want to be negative. Keith, unfortunately, you're just being realistic here. And that's how we have to be, because this is the story of the Philadelphia 76ers season right now in 2024. So the biggest thing going into this game, too, is how is Joel Embiid going to react? Is he going to react positively to Tyrese Maxey coming in? Lou Williams actually went on record and said that everything was being blown out of proportion and these guys were laughing and smiling with each other. So maybe it was just a conversation that Joel and Tyrese were having, but it was something to report on, and there was clearly something going on in that locker room. So Joel comes out, he's able to have a big game, but the defense wasn't there. You're letting guys get into the paint. The perimeter defense is, I want to close my eyes every time a team drives down the floor and shoots from outside or tries to go outside to inside, because it was just terrible against the Memphis Grizzlies. It is something really, really tough to watch. It's crazy to think that you have 2 players, Joel Embiid scoring 35 points, Jaron McCain scoring 20 points. I know Tyrese Maxey is coming off an injury. Paul George goes down injured as well. But you have those 2 guys chipping in, and the 76ers still fall short. And really, the score doesn't do it justice, because they were down pretty badly and had that late comeback with about 2 minutes left to go.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, but, it got to a point where I felt like Memphis was kind of sort of like, okay, we got this thing. And the Sixers kept battling. But, yeah, the problem is before Paul George went out, like when you look at it, I mean, he shot 1 for 6. I mean, he was struggling to shoot the ball. We look at Caleb Martin. We talk about him like, here's a guy who had three blocks all in the third quarter. He had 4 steals, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 1 steal. But he passed up 2 easy baskets, right, in return, like trying to get assists. And he only had 2 points on 1 for 3 shooting, so he should have played better. But you look at it, Yabusele and Drummond, they both played phenomenally off the bench. Kelly Oubre looked good off the bench. But I think that, the fact that Maxey struggled a little bit and it was his first game back, we get it. Paul George, he was ineffective before he went out in the first half, and Martin just kept passing up stuff. To me, it just seems like they struggled. And we look at it again, right? The thing that's been killing them all season has been 3-point shooting. They made 11 of 33 threes. And when the difference in the game to me was the fact that Memphis, even when it was close, Memphis made 19 of 43 threes. That was the difference in the game right then and there for me.
How much more can you struggle from beyond the perimeter? I mean, it has been the storyline as well throughout this season for the Philadelphia 76ers. And, I want to look at positive things and Joel Embiid coming out and having a big game. But when you are losing to a team like the Memphis Grizzlies and they are down 6 people, how do we look at the rest of the schedule before December and say, oh, yeah, well, they have a great chance against the Clippers because Joel put up 35 points. They have a great chance against the Hornets. No, they do not. If they look this rough against the Memphis Grizzlies, Paul George is a player, too, I want to focus on here because he just hasn't really been able to find his groove yet. And I know he goes out with an injury. And right now, Nick Nurse says he doesn't think there's any structural damage. There was actually kind of a time where he might have been able to come back in, but they were awaiting it because it looked like he needed to go back to the locker room. So we're going to wait on that and see what happens. But PG is supposed to be this great acquisition. And so far, he has not found his groove at all on the offensive side of things. It's been like, oh, well, one half is really good. And then all of a sudden he's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is, initially early on, I mean, I looked at it, everyone else had a shot attempt besides him. Even Caleb Martin, who was passing up shots, had a shot attempt, and PG was just out there. And then when he finally started shooting, I believe he missed his first 3 shots. Like one, I think, was an air ball, was kind of bad. The other one was like, they were just bad shots. And then he makes one, and then he misses his next 2. So, it's one of those things. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. Like he's not in rhythm. He doesn't want to take a shot because he's not making them, and he feels like the best play to make is to make sure you get it to Embiid, you get it to McCain, you get it to Maxey. But, he's just not doing it. And again, he's playing well on the defensive end at times, but it just seems like offensively, he's just out there.
And it's so tough to look at right now. We put a poll on Twitter asking people, can the 76ers turn their season around? We have 28 votes right now, 39% saying yes, 61% saying absolutely no chance. And a lot of people commenting as well saying, well, if it comes by the time of December and they don't get out of this funk, it's going to be really, really hard. Once again, the only sign that they've shown is that Joel Embiid can play well. But the weirdest thing is to me right now is Guerschon Yabusele has been playing well. He's one of the more consistent players. Jaron McCain has been the most consistent player for the Philadelphia 76ers. When you're throwing these names out there, Keith, and then you say, well, yeah, Joel Embiid's there, Tyrese Maxey's injured, but he's going to be coming back and playing up to his level, but they still can't win basketball games. What is it? Is it the rotations? Is it Nick Nurse right now? Because Nurse in the press conference was frustrated with the lack of physicality and not going out there. How does this team come out with a lack of physicality and have that throughout the rest of the game after how they've played?
And I get that. I get that, and that's not the first time he said that. The one thing that I will say about this team is, and he keeps saying that, but it's a small, banged up team. Like you have Joel Embiid, you have Drummond, you have Paul George, but no one else on that roster is bigger than 6'8". Like, you know what I mean? They're all like wings and guards, and they're old dudes, right? For the most part. So I understand what he's saying, but I just feel like other teams are just bigger, stronger than them, and younger and more athletic. So yeah, they're gonna get pushed around and this and that. But to me, that's not the only reason why they lost. I mean, they lost because they can't shoot the ball. They lost it because they can't prevent. Like their perimeter defense was horrible. So when we talk about, yeah, they were getting pushed around, to me, it's kind of like you're burying the lead a little bit. And I love Nick Nurse, but you're burying the lead. Like, what happened? Like, these dudes were raining threes on them left and right, and they normally don't hit that many threes. And we're talking about a team without 6 players, 3 starters. Yeah. So, what I mean? I get it. They were getting pushed around. I understand that's what Nick said. But to me, it was like a lot of reasons why they lost. And this team, look at this team, Kayla. You look at it. You have Drummond, who's listed at 6'11", but he's saying he's only 6'9". You have Embiid 7'2". You have Paul George 6'8". You got a 6'5" power forward and Caleb Martin, and then you got a bunch of wings, right? So that's crazy. The one thing that I will say, and I know I'm going long, but Eric Gordon, he came here to be a 3-point shooter. That's what he does, right? He only had 1 shot attempt, and it wasn't a 3. So either he's not getting open or the ball's not finding him, because when he comes in the game, that has to be what you look for. You have to pass him the ball to hit a 3, and he didn't. No one did it.
And nobody is doing it. And I don't know if that's something they tried to look for going forward, but too little too late in the sense of why aren't you trying things out? Because nothing is working. You got to go to guys that can shoot the ball well. And if that's all they can do, that's all they can do. But at least they can come out for a few minutes and give you some hope beyond the perimeter, because there has been zero, none, no hope from three-point land for the Philadelphia 76ers so far this season. Now the other thing that is one of the biggest worries, and I know it's part of the game of basketball, the injury bug. It's continuing to happen. We saw Paul George on the same exact knee, really the same exact thing happening this time, looking at no structural damage, but cannot confirm that yet. So we're going to look over that coming up in just a moment. But first, we have to tell you about Game Time. What time is it, people? It is Game Time. There's a super deal going on right now that you will not want to miss. It is the Ravens versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Which is the better bird, people? Well, if you want to go see it in person, you can with these fantastic deals on Game Time. $35 off Club 204, row 7 at $542. The great deal, upper end zone, row 10 at the top, 10% value as well. In addition, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDON. NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. Oh boy, the injury bug coming around Philadelphia. So there's a lot of things to look at right now, because this team cannot play without this big three being together. They're not going to win games. They're not going to get far. We've already seen it throughout this season. Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey with the supporting cast is not enough. They need Paul George to be able to get where they want to be, if that's even something that they can do at this point, at being 2-12 early on in this season. So Paul George has that same hyperextension we saw earlier in the preseason. And Keith, he was out for an extended period of time. Can the 76ers handle having somebody like PG out once again? I don't think so. I don't see them being able to do that, because they're already losing games and they haven't even really had this core three together throughout an entire game yet this season.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think they can. No, because I mean, the problem is, it's like at this stage, it becomes a mental thing. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is, it's like, wow, you mean to tell me he was getting ready, like Maxey was coming back, we was getting ready to go rolling, start, the next game he was going to play more minutes. By the time we play the Clippers, we were going to be in there. And now all of a sudden he goes down again. And the thing is, Nick Nurse did say there was a chance that he could return to the game and to start stiffening up. And he believed there's no structural damage, right? But to me, you really won't know anything until tomorrow, because
Right.
then that's when he gets off the plane, he gets some rest, and then next thing you know, you'll see how it responds then. If it's swollen, what's going on, this and that. So to me, it's just this team has been snake bitten. And right now we're looking at it. And yes, Joel Embiid did have 35 points. But now we're looking at it for the next couple games until Maxey gets back to 100%. It's going to be the Embiid and Jared McCain show, right? And as good as Jared McCain is playing, I'm pretty sure it's one of those things where the 76ers like, yeah, but we wanted Jared McCain to be the fourth option, not the number 2 option.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It just seems kind of crazy. Not crazy, but all these injuries they keep going through. And you hope for the 76ers that this is not another 2 to 3 week injury. You hope that. And typically when you hyperextend your knee and you get a bone bruise, that's the timeline for it, unless this guy wants to fight back. So if it's 2 weeks, the Sixers could be in trouble. They could be in trouble.
I don't want to panic and I don't want to overreact, but if it's 2 weeks to 76ers season, we can wave it goodbye. And I say that because we've touched on it before. If they get into the play-in, if they're a low seed, there's no chance for them to be able. Look at how Boston is playing right now. Look at how the Cavaliers are playing right now. Unless multiple of their guys get injured or their main guys get injured, those are going to be teams that are going to be impossible to beat for this unit for the Philadelphia 76ers right now. The Knicks really on that list too as well. So I look at it and there's definitely a source of worry here. And I don't want to be panic, but you look at it, you're not only relying on Jared McCain. By the way, all respect to Jared McCain, he's at top of the Rookie of the Year list right now, but his scoring hasn't been enough to win games already. Joel Embiid is not 100%. This was his best game back so far, but defensively, he didn't look great. Tyrese Maxey is not 100%, and Paul George could be out for an extended period of time. Once again, we don't know anything to confirm that yet, but that is what we looked at last time around when a very similar injury happened. So, Keith, I don't see them going very far without Paul George. Not only that, Joel Embiid is still not going to play on back-to-back. So what? You don't have Paul George for 2 to 3 weeks? Possibly. We're looking at worst-case scenario here. Possibly. And then Joel Embiid doesn't play back-to-backs. I'm a true believer of expect the worst and hope for the best. So that's what I'm coming at this with right now. But this team just isn't good enough to lose one of their big three. And hey, we might be looking at a situation where the Nets big three played more games together than the Philadelphia 76ers big three.
Yeah, I hope that's not true for them. But so let's just say if it is 2 weeks. Let's just say if it is. So 2 weeks would be they would miss 5. He would miss 5 games. So he would miss Friday's game against the Brooklyn Nets, then Sunday's game against the Clippers. Then next Wednesday, they play the Houston Rockets. Then next Saturday, they play Detroit. And then they play Charlotte on the 3rd of December. And that the second game of that back-to-back would be Orlando. So he could, if it is 2 weeks, he could return that day, or he could wait until 2 days later when they play the second game of a 2-game homestand against Orlando. So, you know what I mean? But at the same time, when you look at it, we already talked about it. I do not expect them beating the Clippers or beating Houston without them. And I think maybe the Detroit game, depending on who plays, depending on how many minutes Maxey plays, you would have to depend a lot on Joel Embiid to get like 40 points to win that game. And again, I know Detroit isn't a good team, But I'm just saying they're going to try to run them. They're going to try to do whatever they can to get that victory. So it's not a hard slate of games, but at the same time, you don't want your big guy out for that extended period of time.
Yeah, and you're relying on a Joel Embiid that isn't 100% either coming into these next few games. So we're going to wait and see. Fingers crossed that Paul George is going to be okay and can come back, but it's already been rough for this team. It could be even worse if Paul George has structural damage, once again, hyperextending that knee. But Joel Embiid did come in and kind of be able to take that criticism and put up some numbers. So we're going to analyze his performance as a whole and what he can do going forward to try to put this team on his back, quite literally. We'll see if it can work out for the Philadelphia 76ers, because at this point, he may be the only hope. And we've all hit a point where we realized it was time to make serious money moves. Take control of your finances by using Chime checking amount with features like no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Learn more at chime.com/NBA. How it works: you set up direct deposit in your Chime account. After a qualifying direct deposit of $200+, Chime will notify and enroll to SpotMe with an activated debit card. You can have that Chime will spot you up to $200 when you exceed your balance. Your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. Chime never changes fees or interest for using SpotMe. Make your fall finances a little greener by working towards your financial goals with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. Chime, it feels like progress. Well, some progress for Joel Embiid, you could say, coming into the game against the Memphis Grizzlies. So he had 10 first quarter points, and then, of course, finishes with the first double-double, 35 and 11, leading scorer for the Philadelphia 76ers. I liked what I saw. He was more aggressive. He was almost perfect from the free throw line as well, being able to drive. I still don't love him settling for threes. That's something about his game that I cannot stand. But defensively, I mean, he had 5 fouls in that game, almost fouls out there at the end, a big turnover at the end as well, trying to just find his guys. You know, the biggest thing here, Keith, is that this team is not going to win without Joel Embiid, at least not this season. Now, if they want to say, we're going to go away from Joel Embiid, then you rebuild around Tyrese Maxey. That's one thing. But for this year, it's Joel Embiid all or nothing, or you pretty much have nothing. I like what I saw. How do the Philadelphia 76ers build around this? Because if Tyrese Maxey can get healthy, PG can maybe come back, and it might be a little bit easier for him if those two can get a rhythm going.
Yeah. I think that right now, if the way it looks, the way the PG has been playing, it looks like, Embiid, and it's going to be the Embiid, Maxey, and probably the Jared McCain show on the offensive end, whereas PG is going to try to do other things, right? Help out as much as he can. And so I feel like that's what he's going to do. The thing that I liked about Joel was he was more active than he's been all season, right?
Yeah.
Instead of standing in perimeter, now he did shoot some threes. He didn't really look good on those shots, but he was around the basket more, and he crashed the boards. He also played with a nice rhythm. And while being in attack mode enabled him to get to the foul line where he was 14 from 14. And that's pretty good considering, as we talked about a couple of days ago, he didn't attempt a free throw in their last game, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that was the key of him being, attack mode, trying to do stuff, doing everything that way. Because in the past, he was just timid and he was unsure and he just looked like he didn't want to be out there. This time he did. And the key was he did it in the third quarter. He scored 14 of those points, right? Whereas the last game that we saw him in the third quarter, he was just like, all right, it's ready for me to go home. I'm talking about when they played against Orlando. So, yeah, I felt like this was his best game in regards to having a complete game.
And I want to see more of this from Joel Embiid. The consistency needs to be there because we've talked about the lack of that with this team in general. But he can single-handedly turn this thing around. We've alluded to their slate of schedule, and I think it's going to be tough without Paul George. And I'm not saying they're going to go on this crazy run, but if Joel Embiid can play like that and Jared McCain can be there and Tyrese Maxey gets better, maybe this team can go up against the Nets and come out with a victory. I still don't think that they defeat the Clippers. Maybe against the Hornets, that's going to be tough with Green and company on that side. And then you look at the Charlotte Hornets, I said the Rockets, excuse me, then the Charlotte Hornets, you should be able to win that game. But it's tough. And the 76ers big three, they've only played 6 minutes together in total so far this season. So when you look at that, I don't think there's any other option here, Keith, for Joel Embiid, but then to put this team on his back. He is the franchise player. And this is going to show us if he can handle that pressure, because it's going to be a lot going forward, whether you have Paul George or not, because now you're in charge of digging this team out of a 2-12 record.
Yeah, you're 100% right. But the one thing that I will say, I'll give him credit for, is that after what happened in the post game and the criticism he had, he showed up and he came out and he played well. But you are 100% right. It's all, even if Paul George was playing, it's all about Joel Embiid being aggressive and playing the way that we've known that he could play, and we're used to seeing him play the last couple of seasons. So, yeah, it's going to be tough on them. And again, they dropped to 2-12, which is horrible, and other teams are winning. So it's going to be tough. But at the same time, in order for them to make any type of run, you are correct. It has to start with Joel Embiid.
Accountability is there, and he was able to take it. So that is a good sign for the Philadelphia 76ers at this point. So just looking at the schedule coming up, they play the Nets on Friday. That's at home in Philadelphia. Not only are they 2-12, but they've also really struggled on the road this season. How do you look at this Nets game approaching with Joel Embiid now kind of finding his offensive game finally a little bit? But before we send things off, they come back home. We'll see if the Philadelphia faithful help Joel Embiid out, give him some applause, whatever that may be. Do you see at home maybe is where the Philadelphia 76ers can turn this around? And before I've said, well, we can't make that prediction without Paul George. But as we just alluded to, no matter if Paul George is on the court or not, Joel Embiid is going to be the difference maker here. And they need to figure out ways to win with Joel, even if Paul George is not on the floor.
Yeah, they have to figure out ways to win without, with Joel, if Paul George isn't on the floor. You look at it and you say to yourself, well, why can't they beat the Brooklyn Nets? It's the Brooklyn Nets, right? But then at the same time, we look at it and, they've been losing the undermanned squads all season, and been laying eggs. So, I feel like they need to step up. Like if they play the way they played last night against the Memphis Grizzlies, they are going to lose to the Brooklyn Nets. They just are. Now, if they come out and play the way that, they're expected to play or something like that, they may have a chance. But, the problem is, it's like clockwork. Like every game, they go into a game and then there's a third quarter, whatever, and the other team just goes on a run, right? We look at the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets are 6-9. The 76ers are 2-12. So as much as we want to say, you know what, the Brooklyn Nets are trash, it's kind of sort of like teams are looking to play the Sixers so they can get a victory. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. Now, Brooklyn, they beat the Hornets 116-115. Before that, they lost 3 straight games, but they lost to the Celtics and they lost back-to-back games to the Knicks. So, they played pretty good teams, but I don't know, man. The Sixers have to show me that they're capable of playing better. If they continue to play the way they played the last couple games, there's no way in heck they can win. Because think about this, Kayla. They lost to a team that was out 6 players, 3 starters, and then they lost to a Miami team who was also without 2 starters, right? Jimmy Butler it was his first game back. And then when they went to Orlando, they lost to a team without 2 starters. So, and was banged up. So they haven't shown us that they can beat a team. I mean, a team with a regular roster. They haven't shown us that.
It's almost like they're undermining their opponents, either that or teams that don't have maybe those starting guys. It always comes about, like when we see Ricky Council on the floor, right? He's ready to go. He's an energizer bunny because he wants to make the most of his minutes. That's how these guys that the 76ers are playing against are coming in. And the vets and the age up there for the Philadelphia 76ers cannot keep up with these young athletes running up and down the floor. Nick Nurse said it, that the physicality just wasn't there and they were not able to keep up. But they need to figure this out. This is a big stretch, and we're going to make sure that we stay on top of what's going on with Paul George. We'll wait and see. Last time around, it looked like the same injury that happened in the preseason with the hyperextended knee. That's about a 2 to 3 week waiting period. So we're going to have to wait and see. But we will have the latest updates on Paul George as they are released as well. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we will see you guys next time.